This paper emerges out of what for me had been a mystery. When, as part of a project about the caste war of Yucatan, I was doing interviews with elderly Maya people whose ancestors had migrated southward to the village of San Jose, Belize. Many of them recited to me the place names of locations through which their ancestors had passed along the way: Icaiche, Xmabash, Yaloch, Xochquitam, Caxiluinic, Choro, San Pedro, and others. The careful attention given to enumerating the several places in order gave me pause. I wondered what was so significant about the place names that was worth remembering, reciting, and passing down through the generations. With a couple of exceptions, none of those locations are inhabited today, and none can be found on modern Belizean maps. Why then do those place names resound and echo in the present? In this paper, I suggest that place names may be a critical component of heritage, one worth preserving and celebrating, as invoking place names is a means by which people transmit practical knowledge, embed a moral code into the landscape, stake claims, and render moral judgments about past and present. In thinking through these issues, I found insight in Keith Basso's Wisdom Sits in Places, an achingly beautiful ethnography about Western Apache place names and what they reveal about Apache understandings of the past, morality, and wisdom. Basso notes, when something about a place draws attention to, quote, the passage of time, and a place presents itself as bearing on prior events, ordinary perceptions begin to loosen their holds, and the country starts to change. Awareness has shifted its footing, and the character of the place, now transfigured by thoughts of an earlier day, swiftly takes on a new and foreign look. Accordingly, simply uttering an older, displaced, and suppressed place name forces the listener to ask the question, what happened here? Basso borrows Bakhtin's concept of the chronotope, which is a location at which time and space intersect, engendering rich meanings. Invocations of the past in meaningful places thereby transform the listener's perception of the place. In Basso's words, quote, thus does the country of the past transform and supplant the country of the present. Do any Maya place names appear on modern Belizean maps? The Maya place names that do appear on modern maps, whether official ones or in tourism materials, tend to be those of the ruins of ancient Maya cities, of a very grand and magnificent tangible heritage, now aggressively marketed as tourist attractions as part of the Belizean Plan for National Development. The Maya, therefore, are encoded only as a deceased culture with little relevance for the present. This erasure of the modern Maya has been consistent over time. For decades, British Honduran colonial reports characterized the land as essentially depopulated when the British defeated the Spanish at the Battle of St. George's Key in 1798, and characterized the Yucatec Maya people in the colony as latter-day immigrants, having arrived as refugees during the caste war. This fallacy of terra nullius was central to British claims of sovereignty and land rights in the region. However, the land was populated with Yucatec Maya people prior to that battle, and what is now Belize was a zone of refuge for Maya people fleeing more intensive colonial depredations in the northern half of the peninsula since the 16th century. If there is one thing that is consistent about Yucatec Maya history in the Belize region, it is displacement. Spanish colonialism was characterized by military conquest and the forced relocation of people from dispersed settlements into more compact villages in which they could be surveilled and subjected to labor regimes and heavy tax and tribute burdens. Flight into the Belize region from Spanish colonial impositions stretched across 3 centuries of Spanish rule. When British loggers and slavers arrived on the scene, they raided indigenous villages, causing survivors to move their villages away from the coasts and major waterways and farther into the interior. In the 19th century, Mexican independence meant relief from colonial-era tribute and tax obligations, but those were replaced by new taxes, which by design created a tax debt labor system in which tax burdens resulted in the accumulation of debts which could only be paid by working within the expanding export-oriented plantation system. Accumulated debts resulted in countless peasants becoming attached to estates as indebted peons. Fleeing the estate was the only way to escape that debt, and again, flight to the Belize region was common. These exploitive conditions in Yucatan additionally triggered the Maya caste war rebellion of 1847 to 1901. Thousands of Yucatecans fled to relative safety in what the British were then calling the colony of British Honduras. Exploitation of plantation workers was a major cause of the Mexican Revolution, 1910 to 1921, and the resulting food insecurity led even more Yucatec Maya peasants to flee southward into the Belizean forests. Colonialism, rebellion, revolution, and capitalist exploitation, wave after wave, triggered flight southward. What is the heritage of fugitives and refugees, though? When on the run, Maya peasants would have needed to travel light, just what they could carry in a bag balanced on their head with a tump line. Heavy items of material culture would have weighed them down. What they needed most on the run was knowledge of the thickly forested landscape, where they could find water, fruit, game animals, and other people who might give them safe haven. Maya place names encode just that information. Chorchkitam, salted peccary, Shmabash, hog plums, Yaloch, opossum's offspring, Bekal, place of the Eretia tenefolia tree, Tepakan, at the nopal plant, Hunukma, many waters. Place names often indicate where fresh water could be found. For example, Mopila, water by the wine palm tree, Kankabjen, well in the red soil, Chaltunjen, well in the flat rock, Sakanitelchen, well by the Plumeria alba tree, Zitnup, by the single wine palm. Roads and rivers are named after the places to which they head, providing an indication of whether they be friendly or foe. The Belize River, the way to the Itza, Zuluwiniko'om, the foreigners. The place names, therefore, encode information necessary for survival of people on the move. When ancestors would recount to their descendants their accounts of migration and carefully list the place names through which they passed, they were also transmitting to their descendants that valuable knowledge about how to safely navigate through the landscape. Ultimately, by the mid-19th century, the northwestern quadrant of what is now Belize was populated with several Maya villages, including San Jose, as represented here. The place names have, however, more than just a denotative function. They are poetic and evocative. The careful recitation of names is a testament to the dogged tactics of survival as people fled taxation, forced relocation, forced labor, debt peonage, war, and military draft. It documents their struggles and the determination to find safety. This raises the critical issue that the Yucatec Maya in Belize have been displaced at least twice, first from Yucatan to the Belize region, and again within Belize itself. Within the fledgling colony of British Honduras, the Honduras Land Titles Act of 1861 allowed British capitalists to purchase large tracts of land, even if no prior title existed. Subsequently, one company, the British Honduras Company, emerged as the largest landowner in the colony, owning 1/5 of all the land and nearly the entire northwestern quadrant of the colony, where those many Maya villages were situated. The BHC was involved in several commercial ventures, first mahogany and subsequently sugarcane and chicle in addition. As tenants, the Maya villagers had to pay rent for their house and garden plots to the company, which in many cases obliged them to work for the company in some capacity. Ultimately, the company won out. Maya gardening was deemed a threat to the valuable mahogany stands, and one by one, entire villages were evicted. In 1936, the residents of San Jose were made to pack up their belongings. They were loaded onto railway carts, the same ones that moved out the mahogany logs, put on a barge upriver, and resettled on a reservation. Their houses and fields were burned to prevent them from moving back. Looking at a modern map, therefore, one would see no indication that there were once sizable, interconnected Maya communities in which people grew their own food, raised their children, governed themselves, and attended church and school. Consequently, when Maya elders recount to their descendants the names of the several places through which their ancestors passed, They communicate several things. They transmit practical knowledge that is helpful for navigating the terrain, and they evoke a history of exploitation, but also of resilience, in which people relied on ancestral knowledge to find their way to safety and freedom. Even after they were displaced one final time and moved to a reservation, they committed those place names to memory and recited them like a sacred litany to preserve those memories of both desperation and dignity. Reciting those names in the present recognizes and honors that knowledge and the courage of those who risked beatings, whippings, and the return to peonage in order to give their children the chance at a better life. Reciting those names across generations bears witness to their struggles, their tenacity, and their right to recognition in the present as legitimate Belizeans. Thank you.